It's Yahoo Sports here on a Thursday. Kevin Iole, our lead MMA writer, is hanging out with us. And an interesting card coming up, UFC on versus 4. And I think the intrigue, storyline-wise, are the 55ers going down to 145.
Yeah, there seems like a flood now of UFC lightweight, Steve, dropping down to featherweight. I'm not quite sure why, because Jose Aldo is sitting there as a champion at 145, and I don't see that as an easy task. Kenny Florian, I think it was obvious that he had to drop down just to get another title shot, because he had multiple title shots at 155, and I think it would have been a long, long time for him to get another championship shot at lightweight. So by moving down, he could put himself into contender status a lot quicker. So I understand his move. Some of the other moves, I think they're a little bit different. Joe Daddy Stevenson's struggled since losing to BJ Penn over in rainy Newcastle, England. I was over there for that fight, and Joe was really dominated and hasn't really been the same guy since. Hasn't been able to get back on track. And Tyson Griffin has kind of had some stops and starts to his career. He started off really well at one point, and now he's kind of been on the skids a little bit. And I think looking to move down. And I think it's going to affect these guys in different ways.
Let's talk about Florian first. He's the first prominent guy to come down from 55 to 45. What do you think of his performance?
I thought it was great. When I looked at him at the weigh-in, I went, oh, my God. I just didn't think he was going to be able to fight. I saw him during his weight cut. For people who don't run into fighters on a daily basis, you don't want to be asking for autographs or going up talking to them when they're in the middle of the weight cut. And I was coming back from a Starbucks in Vancouver, and I saw Kenny bundled up with all the stuff on. He was going on to lose the weight and did not look like a happy camper. This was on a Friday morning. And when I saw him at the weigh-in, I thought, oh, boy, he hadn't done a practice cut, and it just didn't look good at all. But I thought against a very good, very athletic, very determined Diego Nunes, I thought that he looked terrific. And so I give Kenny a lot of credit. I'm not sure I agree that he deserves the next title shot, given that he's had 2 championship shots. Chad Mendes is out there. But, he's going to get it, and he looked great in winning that fight against Nunes, who is not an easy opponent.
So for Florian, the cut was difficult. I thought he looked good, but I thought he lacked a little bit of explosiveness. It's first time down at 45. I would actually argue that for Stevenson and for Griffin, they're shorter guys, so on the surface it should be easier to make the cut, but they're really thick dudes. So
especially Tyson. Yeah. I've always looked at Tyson, and I've seen him with the big, thick legs and the big butt and all that. And he's just a big guy, and to lose that kind of weight, when you lose muscle, and I just can't see Tyson, going to 145 and not having to lose some muscle. And so you're not the same physically when you do that. There's some guys that, hey, if they lose fat and everything, they don't have the same percentage of body fat. It's a big difference.
Stevenson is fighting Javier Vasquez. Tyson Griffin is fighting Manny Gambirian, who just challenged for the title a couple of fights back, and yet both, moving down to 45 against pretty highly rated guys, are sizable favorites.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I think the odds are appropriate in the Tyson Griffin fight. I think Tyson is a really good fighter, and I think that he's a competitive 155er. So I think seeing him drop to featherweight, and I think this is a good match for him. I think that the odds are appropriate. I think he deserves to be favored in that position. Joe Daddy Stevenson, he's better than a 2-1 favorite.
Yep.
I think he's the better fighter in this spot. But to me, that's a big number for a guy who has not had a lot of success. Joe is a great kid, and everybody who knows him likes him a lot, and you want to see him do well. But you know what? I'm getting to the point. You got to show me, Joe. I need to see it out of you. I don't want to hear you talking and tell me how hard you trained and what you've done. You've added this, you've added that, you've added the other thing. It's what you do in the cage. He's coming off a disappointing performance against Danny Castillo. And so I need to see it against Vasquez, and I'm just not sure why the odds makers decided to make Joe such a big favorite. I think, they would have gotten better action if it had been a lot closer, maybe just pick 'em type fight.
I think they're playing it safe. I think Stevenson's the public guy, and they want to make sure that they don't get slammed on the Stevenson side. So you wouldn't lay minus 240. You would probably bet on Vasquez if you were going to lay money on this at plus 190.
Yeah, I think Vasquez might be worth a shot just at basically getting 2-1 back on your money, Steve. I just don't see Stevenson being worth laying that kind of money given his recent track record. And the other thing is we don't know. Everybody's body's going to react differently. And like you said, Joe Daddy is a big, thick guy. He won the Ultimate Fighter at 170. Now fighting at 145. That's a big cut down in weight. How is he going to look?
I like both of their chances at the weight, as we said, if they can make the cut and they can do it effectively. My worry in the other fight, and Griffin's a smaller favorite at 180, but style-wise, I think Tyson has a lot of trouble stylistically with certain guys. And the guys he's had trouble with are takedown guys and lay and pray guys. He goes in because he's so well-rounded. I think he believes that he can fight, any way that the other opponent is going to try to fight him. And I just think Gambourian is an awful style matchup.
I just think Tyson understands the urgency of this fight. When you drop weight classes, I think you're making a statement in and of itself. Hey, I need to cut. I need to go down because I'm not having the success I wanted to have. If you were winning at lightweight, if he is reeling off and knocking out guys and doing all this, none of these guys would be dropping down. They're moving down because they're competing in a division they feel like they're not going to be as successful in. So right then and there, I think that creates a sense of urgency. And so I think Tyson, is just a better all-around fighter than Manny. Manny's a tough kid and everything, and he's got the judo. But I just think that I would see Tyson being a better all-around fighter here. So I'm not so sure I agree with you on that style comment.
So on the two favorites coming from UFC, I almost said WEC, but that was the old 145. So you would say no on Stevenson minus 240, yes on Griffin minus 180.
I would, yeah. I think, laying 9-5, I would take that risk. I think Tyson Griffin's a good enough fighter. Look at who he's beaten in his career, the great Uriah Faber, among others. So I would think that I would lay that kind of money going up against Manny Gambourian.
I would say no on either fight, and I would not lay the money on either favorite. I have worries in both fights. Check back tomorrow here on Yahoo Sports. We'll have another video with the main portion of the card, and it's not to say these are lesser fights. This is a really good UFC on Versus 4 card.
I think it is. They did my hometown of Pittsburgh crowd. I hope Pittsburgh enjoys this card. It's going to be a good one.
Talk to you tomorrow, Kevin.
Thank you, Steve.